Good afternoon. Welcome to Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion. My name is Buffy. I'm an almost 18-year criminal defense attorney who will be providing the analysis in this podcast. Today we're talking about when grief isn't correct, how the perfect parent myth distorts justice. What does a good grieving parent look like? And who gets to decide? People that don't know the person or the people that actually know the person? Generally, it's the viewers of true crime television who have all sorts of opinions, whether or not they've actually been in the criminal justice system, whether they know someone who's been in the criminal justice system, or they just are armchair critics, right? And there's a lot of armchair critics at times, aren't there? I mean, even people living their lives like you and I, right? There are people who are going to judge us, and they're going to judge us no matter what we do, right? Because nothing we do for some people is ever enough. And I'm sure you all can relate to that, right? I know I can. Because in criminal cases involving families, grief is rarely treated as human. It's treated as evidence. So if someone has a stoic appearance and they don't appear to be grieving, that person is clearly guilty. They had something to do. They had something to do with it. They have no remorse. They have no regard for their child. Nothing. They're cold-hearted. They're indifferent. They're the ice princess. I mean, things that people say about women, right? The unspoken rule. Parents, especially mothers, are judged not just on facts, but on demeanor, right? Now, on the flip side, if somebody is crying so hard that they can't compose themselves, that can also be seen as staged, as faked, as performative, right? Rather than people experience things differently, right? Two people could experience the same exact thing. One of them would deal with it internally, meaning maybe they were shamed for having particular emotions. So they do not want to let those emotions be visible to people and strangers that they do not know. To be a soundbite for other people so they can watch it over and over and over again and determine their mannerisms and scrutinize every single thing that they're doing, right? So it's almost like darned if you do, darned if you don't, right? If you're a stoic person, then clearly like you're cold-hearted, like you don't care about your kid, right? If you cry too much or you may have signs of potential nervous system activation, such as shaking or trembling or just being overcome with emotion and maybe fainting. I had a relative who at pretty much every funeral, they would faint. And it would freak me out. I'm not going to lie. It was terrifying. Which would then cause me to be upset because I was worried about my relative, right? And literally, like that was not something that they put on. It was just something that their body was like, I am overcome with grief. I'm overcome with emotion. Oh my goodness. Like I am going to pass out, and they would pass out. Now, some people be like, oh, that was fake, whatever. No, it was not fake. It was terrifying for me anyway, especially as a kid. So too emotional is suspicious. Too calm is cold. Too composed means you're guilty, right? You have no emotion at all. You're guilty. We expect grief to perform for us, to convince us that this person is actually experiencing what they say they're experiencing. We want to see firsthand with our own two eyes. I don't know. She's rubbing her eyes too much. It's like she's trying to force tears to come out of her eyes. The things that people say, you're like, seriously? Like, that's crazy. I don't see any tears coming out. Do you, John? I don't see any tears coming out. No, she's squeezing her eyes really tight. I think she's trying to get tears to come out. She's definitely guilty. I can tell by looking at her. Don't you think so, John? So we want grief to be a performance, to convince us that we should trust this person. A lot of people are like that. I don't understand that. Just so you know, I am not the type of person who is looking for people to perform grief for me. Seeing other people grieving does not make me feel like I'm satisfied or like I need to judge them and determine if what they're feeling is actually reality. If their performance, garners applause, right? No, absolutely not. I don't like to see people grieving. I remember during September 11th, there was so much grief around. It was so heavy, just sad, right? It was that period of time. If you lived during September 11th, you remember all of that, right? All the sadness and all the just kind of despair and just the kind of like dark, kind of heavy clouds that seemed to kind of just gather, right? Yeah, I wanted to be a broadcaster during that time. And then seeing all the questions that were asked at the people, and then you learn about the planes, and no thank you. I do not need to question anyone on their grief. If you say, that you are sad, I will take you at your word. If you say that you've experienced certain situations, I will take you at your word. No one has to prove anything to me, right? I don't need to see somebody in pain to prove that they're in pain, right? They owe me nothing. Nothing. They don't know me. I don't know them. Why do I have the right to say, so are you sad? Can you demonstrate how sad you are for me? Absolutely not. Come on. What makes people think that they have the right to be a spectator when somebody else is experiencing grief? The polite thing to do is just to kind of look away or offer I'm so sorry for your loss, right? And when grief doesn't perform, we grow uncomfortable, right? Because there's people that believe that they're entitled to have a front row seat to your worst day. Are they entitled? No, they're not. You don't owe them anything. You don't owe them a performance. You don't owe them what they think you should be doing. Should I cry a little bit more for you? Should I, I don't know, pull my hair? I mean, what should I do, So let's talk about the legal reality. In court, demeanor is not evidence. People react differently under stress. A lot of people don't like talking in public, so then you escalate that to testifying. But in real life, it influences everything. Juries say they can separate emotion from fact. Research shows they often cannot. They may think they can. They may feel they can. But maybe it's something about the courtroom environment. Maybe it's the maybe it's the atmosphere of seriousness and officiality, potentially. Demeanor bias quietly shapes credibility assessments, right? How is someone acting? Oh, I think they're faking, so I don't really trust them. It also affects how we judge the witness, our interpretation of what they're doing, as well as in public opinion long after a verdict is reached. I mean, there are multiple people who will rewatch certain cases and say, I've always known that person was guilty. I don't trust them. They clearly had something to do with their child disappearing, and that's that. For instance, I don't know if you all remember that case in Florida where that little girl disappeared. I think she was like 4 or 5 years old. Her stepmother, they had accused her stepmother of doing something with her. Misty was her first name. I can't remember her last name. I want to say it was like Lakeland, Florida or something. But yeah, everyone just knew that she was guilty based on how she was acting and all of that. And then there was an issue where her parents her stepmother and her father had actually got caught on a wiretap or something along those lines, like selling drugs or something like that. And so people were like, I told you they were guilty. I told you they were guilty. So the damage. Once the media picks a narrative, and oftentimes you have to be really discerning with what you're listening to in the media, because journalists have ethics. The media should have ethics, but sometimes to get things to print, to get things to broadcast, they literally push the envelope because they want to be the one who gets the story first. They want to be the one having the sensationalism so that you'll actually pay attention. And the thing is, I remember during the Casey Anthony case, I know I've talked about this, there were a lot of journalists who were essentially trying to sensationalize things. And I'm sorry, I'm a person that believes that when you have a child who has passed away or is missing or anything like that, there is nothing that needs to be sensationalized in that, right? The family's suffering. Sometimes the parents are suffering. Maybe the parents are the ones who are being accused of the crime. There's no need to sensationalize a child's disappearance. And so once the media picks the narrative and they add things to the story which may or may not be true, I think that that's an issue of journalistic integrity, that you should not make things up just to get more reach in your story, right? I mean, that's just disingenuous. That narrative hardens. Public outrage fills in evidentiary gaps, right? Oh, well, I bet she did this. There's often no proof to that, right? A lot of times. And due process becomes secondary to emotional certainty, which we've talked about emotional certainty. Emotional certainty has no place in a verdict, right? The evidence is what they should be focusing on. Not, oh, I have a gut feeling that mom probably killed her daughter. Well, I'm sorry, Sharon, but your gut feeling doesn't really mean anything. You need to go on the evidence. Justice doesn't collapse loudly here. It erodes quietly. So, closing question for you all. What happens when we trust tears more than facts? Miscarriages of justice, right? Feel free to comment on that if you like. Again, the question is, what happens when we trust tears more than facts? Thank you for tuning in to Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion. And I appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. And I hope that you gathered some insight from this podcast. If you have story ideas that you're interested in, please feel free to let me know. And I'll do my best to accommodate that. As you know, we do have a very kind, considerate community, which I appreciate each and every one of you in it. And also, feel free, like I said, to suggest story ideas or anything like that. And everyone is welcome in this community because there are some pretty great people in the community, including you. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day. Bye-bye.